What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Richard Martini, who is an author and an award-winning filmmaker. Richard has written and/or directed 9 indie films. He's a former freelance journalist for VarietyInc.com, Premiere and other magazines. He is also a graduate of the Masters of Professional program at USC, and now his latest book, FlipSide, A Tourist Guide to the Afterlife, is his debut non-fiction book on a topic that's been haunting him since the death of a soulmate. After a dream version of visiting his friend in the great beyond, Martini went out on a literal quest to find out what the prevailing science and philosophical options on the afterlife are. He journeyed into Tibetan philosophy, made documentaries in Tibet and India, and eventually was introduced to the work of the Newton Institute, founded by renowned author and hypnotherapist Dr. Michael Newton, author of Journey of Souls. Now, to discuss this and much, much more tonight, Richard Martini, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin. How are you today?
I am very, very well. Now, you're based in, is it California? California you're based in?
Wait, let me look out the window. Yes, I am in Santa Monica.
Oh, you lucky man. I would love to be over in California. It's a fantastic place, and to me, it's a very open-minded place. There's a lot of people that are, regularly, are into the spiritual and paranormal, and there's some great meetups that take place there.
Yeah, I think so. But, that's the wonderful thing about the internet.
Well, yes.
Really. Where people who, in the old days, if you talked about things that were spiritual, you were either hanged or sometimes maybe you might have been dunked. and then occasionally it'd be put on a bed of straw and then lit with a candle. And so nowadays you can go online and share your insight or whatever your experience is with other people, and they can't reach through the internet and grab you and
Yes.
put you
Yeah.
at the flame.
Or they can
So,
just leave a nasty comment. But
yeah, that's right. But
yeah.
you know that what I found in this research is the more I sort of put it out, the more I hear from people around the globe who, for whatever reason, found it, found me, found the research, and
Sure.
they find a way to incorporate it into their lives, like
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I came across your work from coast to coast, and I just think, what you've done with this documentary, which I recommend anybody that's really into this subject gets a chance to watch. It's a fantastic documentary, and it started we'll go into what started you off on the journey. I mean, you've done some wonderful books. It's you've done volume 1 and volume 2 of It's a Wonderful Life and the FlipSide. But just to begin with, very briefly, just how did you get involved in the paranormal and more closely into the the near-death and life between life experiences?
Well, and I just, not to correct you, but it's a wonderful afterlife. That's where that came from, because I do live in Hollywood, and I have, pardon me, I have parakeets. No, but in general, it was some years ago. A very close friend of mine was passing away, and I started to experience some kind of visitations from her. So there she was a few miles away, and then she would sort of appear in my dreams. Ultimately, my friend did pass away, and then at some point, maybe about a year later, I was kind of thinking, I wonder, if she was appearing to me while I was sleeping, where is she? What if there is a continuity of consciousness, where does it go? And at some point, I had an out-of-body experience while I was in New York City, and my friend, the experience was. My friend came and yanked me out of my body, and I had the experience of traveling through deep space and going somewhere to what seemed to be another universe. I can only say it was another universe because I had the impression of traveling through space and then turning and going in another direction, and space seemed different wherever I was. That's as best as I can describe it. And there she was. And she opened her eyes and looked at me. And at that moment, some guy outside my window honked his truck horn, and I had the experience of traveling back to Manhattan and seeing it come up at me with great velocity. And when I woke up, I realized, okay, well, that was unusual. And I could have dismissed it, like we do dismiss odd dreams and things, but I kind of thought, it felt like she took me to where she was. So how do I go back there? How do I go visit her if she exists? And so that became the source of my search, really. And because she had been a Buddhist, I kind of studied Tibetan philosophy. I thought, well, maybe they've got a roadmap how to get there.
Yeah.
And I had some really wonderful experiences, but ultimately I stumbled upon, I was actually in England. I was in London. I was visiting with a fantastic fellow, a guy named Robert Beer, Oxford professor. And he turned me on to the work of Michael Newton. Michael Newton was a psychologist who lived here in Los Angeles, practicing in the 1960s, didn't believe in past life regression. He was a skeptic to it. But one day he was working on a client, and the person spontaneously remembered a previous lifetime. Guy had come in with a shoulder pain, and the doctors had said, well, we have no idea what your problem is, so why don't you see a psychologist, maybe put you under hypnosis. And so Michael Newton asked this guy to take him to the source of his pain, and he remembered being a British soldier in the Fourth Corps in the Battle of the Somme in France in 1916, and he saw himself being stabbed by a German soldier. But Newton, the skeptic, didn't believe him. So he was asking him questions like, well, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your regiment? As Newton said, while this poor guy is writhing on his couch. But ultimately, the client was cured of his problem, and he called the next day to say, my wife wanted to thank you. My pain is gone. But that didn't satisfy Newton. He actually contacted the British War Office and said, did you have a guy in the Fourth Corps, et cetera, et cetera. And it turned out this guy really did exist. So Newton opened his practice to past life regressions. As many hypnotherapists will tell you, they don't really care whether the past life regression existed or not. It's really about helping the client, because as in Dr. Weiss, Brian Weiss's work, he had a person who spontaneously, cured herself by remembering a previous lifetime. The answer is you're trying to help people. Okay. But somewhere along the line in the 1960s, Newton's work took a turn. A woman came in, was very depressed, and he was asking her about taking him to the source of her depression. And she said, he said, especially if there's a group around. And she suddenly said, oh, I see. In my life planning process, we all agreed not to be together. The people that I normally incarnate with, we all agreed not to be at the same time in the same place. And Newton said, who are these people? What are you talking about? And she said, well, I see them in your office. And as he put it, when the session was done, he took extensive notes, and it sort of blew his mind. Like, what is she talking about? Where are these people? How could they? It's not a past memory. It's not a future memory. She was saying it's right now. So he basically closed his practice, and for the next 30 years, saw 7,000 clients who took him to this place through deep hypnosis, 6-hour sessions, and ultimately cataloged that work and published a book in 1994, The Journey of Souls. So Robert Beard turned me on to his work about 2003 is when I met Robert. And I thought, wow, what a fascinating documentary, because of course, it can't possibly be true that 7,000 people would say the same things about the Journey of Souls. I just felt that, as a skeptic. But I also thought, well, this is interesting. So I contacted the Newton Institute, and to my surprise, they said, yeah, sure, bring your cameras. We're doing a conference in Chicago, my hometown. So I went to this conference, and Michael Newton said, they told me he's retired, he doesn't do interviews anymore. But we met, and after a few minutes, he said, okay, I'll give you my last interview. So, he hasn't done any since. So I interviewed him for about 3 hours, and I'd read his books, and then I interviewed his wife. So that was interesting for me, because I was able to sort of corroborate some of the unusual things he was saying about his work. And I asked his wife, I said, so what did you think when your husband came home and said, this is what people are saying? And she said, I thought he was nuts. She thought they were going to, take him away. That's what the way she put it. She said, however, and then I heard the tapes. All these people coming in and saying the same thing about the Journey of Souls, people who had never met each other. How could that be? So at that moment, I realized I needed to make tapes. So nowadays you can film, your camera, you can film things 8 hours on
solid
one
state.
reel.
Yeah. No, that's it. Yeah.
And so I asked, I said, can I film some of these sessions to see? Because I thought, the camera, it's not going to lie. You'll see if someone's manipulating people, which is, the knock on hypnosis, which is, you must be saying, weren't you Cleopatra? Doesn't this look like the Titanic to you? But no. So I got to film and document the process. And I started filming people in 2004. I've filmed 25 sessions now. And I've made the construct to my own device, which is I choose the person generally who's going to do the session. And I know them from my life. I know their background. I've chosen people who are complete skeptics. I've chosen people who are religious. I've chosen people from all walks of life. I've chosen different hypnotherapists because, then you eliminate the possibility that one person is asking these questions. And over the course of those 25 sessions, everyone has said basically the same thing the 7,000 people said. And then they offered me my own session. They said, well, maybe you should try it. And so I thought, well, okay. Like George Plimpton did in his books, you just try it. So I did. And all I can tell you, it was like taking the red pill. The world shifted for me because I had the exact same experience. I was there, my skeptical mind, my conscious mind, constantly saying, oh, this can't be. You're a screenwriter. You're making this up. And then my subconscious mind saying these things. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing that. And then afterwards, I did the forensic work to see, is it possible that, my memory of that existed? And I found it to be the case. And since then, I've done 4 different sessions with different hypnotherapists, so I could eliminate that myself. Then I thought, well, maybe I'll, have a different past life memory. But no, it's almost like you open a garden gate and then you go, and then suddenly you're back in that garden. So even though I was having a conversation with someone in my mind's eye, and by the way, I went and found my friend Luana Anders, the actress. I went and found her where I thought she would be, and I've had the experience 4 times now of holding her hand, looking her in the eye, her saying things to me that it doesn't feel like I'm making them up. It feels like her sense of humor.
Well, she's passed on, of course, yeah.
Yeah, she passed on in 96. But the first time I ran into her, she was like in a big classroom. Now, that's kind of unusual because before she passed away, she told me she had a recurring dream that she was in a classroom where everyone was dressed in white and saying something, speaking in a language she'd never heard before, but somehow she understood. Okay? At the time, I thought, well, that's the morphine drip. But ultimately, a close friend of hers called me the day she died and said, I had this great dream about her. Luana was she said, in the 4th dimension. She's in a classroom and everyone's dressed in white. And then I mentioned that to the nurse, hospice nurse, who said that was her recurring dream. And then years later, when Robert Beard turned me on to Michael Newton's book, the first chapter, I opened it up and here's a guy talking about classrooms in the afterlife. So now when I'm doing my first session and I'm filming myself, I had the experience of going to not just one classroom, but a number of classrooms in the afterlife. My conscious mind is like, enough already. I've been to school. Like, do I have to keep going to school over there? Like, why would I? But these classrooms, when you ask and ask, you can ask questions while you're over there. It's a very unusual method. So I'm under deep hypnosis, but of course, oh, there goes my daughter. You're never under in this therapy. Because you're always fully conscious. You're just relaxed. So it's a lot like a guided meditation during a yoga class. Picture yourself on a boat on a river. And it's identical, but except it's 6 hours. So basically, you're leading the therapist. You're saying, the therapist is saying, where would you like to go? And 25 people have said, I'd like to go home at some point. And where's home? Well, it ain't here. And they're not talking about Chicago. They're talking about home. What they would agree, or we could agree, is home. You understand? Does that make sense? Right. Yes. And of course, Kevin, your idea of home is going to be different than my idea of home, right? Because, yeah, all different roots. But it's like when people in Newton's work claim that they are visiting a library. The construct is, what do they mean? Is a library? You mean like a place? But they'll call it a library. However, in my observation, no 2 libraries are identical. People will say they see stacks of books. People will say they see scrolls. People say they see all kinds of video screens or film screen or holographic screens. Each one is different. And so that's unusual. But people say I'm in a library and someone's showing me this book. And inside this book is this information. And by the way, your interview with Eric Medhus last whenever you guys did it, I've read his book, My Life After Death. It's a fantastic book, highly recommend it, where he talks about what the process is of being in one of these libraries. Another book I highly recommend, it's by Galen Stoller, a young boy who died some years ago, and his father, with the help of a medium, wrote this book with his son. Now, his son because I've read his book and researched him, and so I've seen some really unusual emails where people who are alive, it's this is kind of hard to put it in one sentence, but basically a woman in St. Louis's husband died, and the husband came through to this woman through a session with a medium, and said to the wife, his widow, "You've got to pick up this book, My Life After Life, by a kid named Galen Stoller." The book has a picture of him on the cover, and he's wearing a red shirt. And but he said, and everyone over here is talking about it. And he said to his wife, "It's probably the best description of what it's like over here." Now that's a really unusual, and of course when I first heard this from Galen's father, I said, "Oh, come on, the medium must have read a review or seen the book." And so he politely, for me, sent this medium and the woman an email, and I've seen the reply where she said, "No, this medium and I have been friends for forever." And no, she did not ever see the book. And yes, this is how it happened, and this is what my husband said, very specifically. Seek this book out because it kind of describes what my experience is over here.
So you sought the book. So you sought the book out then,
sorry?
did you? You sought the book out then. You went to go find the book.
So I sought, yeah. No, actually, I'd run across the book.
Okay.
I sought Ken Stoller, Galen's dad, out. We've become friends. I wanted to know, had he read other books? Was his son, or was he aware of, because he was describing classrooms in the afterlife, and I wanted to know, was he aware of Michael Newton's work? Where did this come from? No, he was not. He's a well-respected pediatrician in Arizona. So in writing It's a Wonderful Afterlife, I asked Galen, Ken's son, if he would write the foreword to my book.
Through a medium, was that?
Through a medium or through his father, I'm not exactly sure on the process, but he wrote the foreword to It's a Wonderful Afterlife Volume 2. And I'm fond of saying I think it's the first foreword ever written by somebody not on the planet. Now, that being said, I've also read, like I said, Eric Metis' book. There's Annie Kagan's book. She's the sister of Billy Fingers, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. Those 3 books, if for anybody who kind of wants to think about the architecture of the afterlife, those books sort of corroborate what I'm hearing while people are under deep hypnosis. And by the way, so I wrote FlipSide, which was based on my documentary and all the footage I shot of people under hypnosis, and then I did transcripts and made chapters out of each session. And then when I presented this evidence, this data to the Department of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, which is Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Jim Tucker, Dr. Ed Kelly, these are the guys who wrote Irreducible Mind. They're scientists. And they said to me, this is fascinating stuff. However, science doesn't consider hypnosis a valid scientific tool. I understand, because they're afraid that the person wants to make stuff up, and how do you prove or disprove that? And I said, well, here's one way to show it. If you have thousands of people saying the same things about the afterlife or the journey, and it doesn't matter who asked them the questions, then you have to take that as a data set of like what the information might be. And then you have to ask, why would it be that people who've never been exposed to this form of hypnotherapy or have any awareness of it say the same things?
Yes.
But I took that admonition into my next book, It's a Wonderful Afterlife. And what I did was I interviewed people who had had near-death experiences, people who've had out-of-body experiences, people who've had near-death experiences and then done hypnosis to see if they could clarify things that they saw. So that has led me to this premise in my next book, Hacking the Afterlife. And I've got a website, hackingtheafterlife.com. I'm crowdfunding this latest book, so whatever. But the idea is I'm trying to access new information from the flip side.
I love the title, Hacking the Afterlife. Great title.
Well, life hacks. Well, these are afterlife hacks, meaning, so let's say you're going through a stressful period in your life, and let's say, wouldn't it be great if you could talk to Grandpa about like why did this happen? Why is this happening to me? Okay? Or why can't I find my soulmate? These questions that we all carry. What if we ask people who are no longer on the planet? Now, I must say, and this is in the research, when you talk to someone who's on the flip side, of course, the initial reaction of like, they're giving me new information is like, what is this? And what I've learned is people who were here on the planet that are over there are not omniscient. They don't suddenly see everything and know everything. They do access, apparently, most people, a lot of people, access their previous lifetimes. So they know the knowledge that they've learned from their journeys here, okay? And they can access the lifetimes of people that are in their soul group, or the people remember the woman I mentioned?
Yes.
She was talking about her soul group. So you get to access their lives. So you get all that information. That's a lot. And then plus you have spirit guides who also can share with you their journeys here on the planet, or according to some of these people, on other planets or other places, other realms. But you get all that information. However, that doesn't make you omniscient. And frequently in this work, I'll ask a specific question to someone. So someone's under hypnosis, and I'm asked, or not under hypnosis, actually. I've learned this of late, which is the mind is this unusual place that remembers everything from your lifetime. And even though you think you can't access it, if you ask questions about it, a lot of times you can actually get into a newer, deeper insight into it, which is all hypnotherapists are doing in this Newton method, which is really asking specific questions about the journey and path that you've been on, okay? So I'm asking somebody on the flip side, so why, the essence of time, the question of time. You've heard this before. There's a lot of people in New Age circles, let's say, who say, time doesn't exist. Once you're outside of this realm, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You've heard that, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So in my research, I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing something slightly different, which is time is different over there, extremely different, relatively different. There's a linearity that happens because people start here and they may wind up over here in terms of their soul's progression. So they're a younger soul, and then they go through experiences and lifetimes, and they end up over here. However, even I was talking to somebody yesterday, oddly enough, and I brought this question up. At some point, here's the construct. I'm talking to a person who I've never met before, who has not read any of my books, has seen my film, contacted me through a friend, and said, I've had these lifelong issues. Is there any way we can access them? And I said, well, let's try. But we're fully conscious. Well, whatever this is. I'm semi-fully conscious. I'm talking to him through Skype. He's actually in a university somewhere back east. He's never done hypnosis. But I just start asking a series of questions about his life and his journey. And eventually we get to a place where it appears, that's all I can call it, that I'm talking to a higher self of his. And I'm asking questions like, does time exist over there? And his response was, think of time as a string. And when you're looking at a string from outside, you see it in a linear fashion. He said, but when you turn it, and it's now you're looking at this, I'm not know if I'm doing that right, but I'm looking at the string, and now you're looking at the whole thing. It's just from the end, it's all one piece. So he said it's a matter of perspective of how you look at the string. Now, that goes into quantum theory, I guess, on some level, or quantum consciousness, whatever you want to call it, but looking at things from a different perspective. So that's why I'm calling it hackingtheafterlife.com, because I'm asking questions over there, that specific questions like, what else can we use besides fossil fuel? How do we change salt water into fresh water in an economical way? I mean, I don't know how that process would work, but if I get a chance to talk to a scientist who understands chemistry, and then I start to ask questions, and I say, all right, I want you to ask your higher self or your guides, how do we do this? And show you the process so that you can bring it back to us. You see? So I'm starting.
That is
because
an
I've
amazing idea. I've just got to say that. That's incredible. I love what you're trying to do, and we will fully support it here as well. And we're just
thanks.
putting up on the screen now your website for the hacking, life hacking as well. That's incredible, that is.
Well, thank you. I was sitting around thinking, what am I doing? I'm a filmmaker, and I'm trying to have a career like anybody else. And, I'm a journalist, and I write, and this stuff kind of fell into my lap one after the other, over and over and over again. And I started to think, well, is there a reason for it that I can help people with, or help the planet with? We all kind of hope that the work we do here has some positive influence.
Yes,
on the planet,
to be of service. Yeah, to be of service and give back. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll give you a specific, unusual example, which is when I did my first Between Life session. And I was, as the skeptic, the whole time going, I can't believe this. I must be making this up. But at some point, I got to what people call a council, or people, in front of me. It seemed like 8 people were in front of me, and I was addressing them. And I said, so why did I choose Rich? Why did I choose Rich Martini? I mean, this is what comes out of this research. We choose who we're going to be for a specific reason, to be of service, just what you said. We might be of service to a loved one. We might play the role of a perpetrator to help loved ones learn lessons that they asked us to help them learn. That's just what people say. Don't shoot the messenger. So, why did I choose Rich? And the answer I got was, every thought, action, word, and deed contains energy. Okay? And you've chosen many lifetimes that had the idea of healing people in the lifetime. Doctors, whatever, different people. And you chose this one because you thought, or you suggested, that film could actually change people's disposition. And comedy, which is what you kind of focused on, is something that can change a person's health instantly with a big guffaw or laugh. I said, tears work the same, but they require catharsis. Now, I'd like to point out I've never used catharsis in a sentence up until that moment, but I understood the concept. Oh, you got to cry and go through the process, and then you get to the same place that the guffaw got you to. And then I said, well, here I am in this weird construct. I'm talking to a hypnotherapist and telling him about the 8 people in front of me. I said, I just wish I chose someone more successful at it. And he laughed, the hypnotherapist laughed, and my counsel laughed. So that's the only time in my life I've gotten laughs on 2 different planes at the same time. So it was an unusual thing. But the idea then, so once I came back and started doing this work and continuing to film and continuing to broaden the research, I thought, well, maybe the next step in this process is to ask them to help us help each other. And, I set aside the religious aspects of it. Look, I know what the religious aspects of it are, and I understand the heresy of what these reports kind of show. At first, I thought, wow, this is amazing. All religions are inaccurate. That was my first reaction to it. Apologies to all religions. But that was the first reaction. And then I realized, wait a second, no, it's all religions are aiming at the same thing. Love your neighbor as yourself. The golden rule applies here because on the flip side, we're all equal. We all come from the same source. We just choose different costumes to wear while we're on stage here. We grab different props. There's different props that you need to fulfill whatever it is you're trying to do. But backstage, no props. All equal. No hierarchy. Young souls, old souls, but total respect. And so if that's true, if that is accurate, then why do we suddenly pretend like it's different here? Why do we pretend that, somebody's famous for something, the way they look, the way they act, the way they talk, the way they move around the room? why do we pretend that? And what's the construct there so that we can sort of not destroy that, but just look at it from a different perspective? I got to tell you, we've all had this experience where you're waking up from a dream and you hear something. I have, and I'm sure many people have. You know, you hear like a voice or something. I heard the words "Vanum populatum" one day, and I got up, what the heck? Who's talking to me? What was that word? And I wrote it down. I thought, well, it's some nonsense word, "Vanum populatum." Then a few weeks later, I found the note, and I thought, oh, that's right, I got to look this up. All right. I'm Googling away. Vanum. Oh, it's Latin. Okay, it means vanity? That's interesting. Populatum. What does that mean? It means to annihilate, to destroy, to utterly wipe off the face of the earth. Like depopulation. Actually, the word is populatum in Latin. So vanum populatum means annihilate vanity. I live in LA. Where do I begin? But ultimately, I realized this is an admonition. And by the way, I just went, I can't even get my mind around, like, who was talking to me? Somebody talking to me in Latin? Why would they talk to me in Latin? I don't speak Latin. I really, wrestled with it for a while, and then I just went, okay, that's, too much information. And now, I think it was 6 months later, here I am in this hypnotherapy session, and I'm in this mental construct of being in a room with wise elders, and I ask, what's the meaning of Vanum populatum? Why did this happen? And they show me it was my higher self. Like a third of our energy is always here, roughly. 2/3 is always home.
Yes.
My higher self gave me that sentence so that I could process it. So I would look it up, knowing that unless I looked it up, I wouldn't understand it. I mean, if I heard, annihilate vanity, it wouldn't mean anything. But because I looked it up, I understood it. And what that really means, I take it to mean, what is vanity? It's not just money and fame, it's that for sure, and things. But it's all those levels of what we aren't while we're here. All the things that we frame in our mind of judging people, those things don't exist over there. So by annihilating vanity, we get a closer idea of who it is we really are.
Yes, which is getting back to that understanding of, well, we can't understand it, we have to feel it, and even feeling it we rarely do probably, which is unconditional love in a sense.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting concept, unconditional love.
Yeah, it is.
What is
well, I don't know.
What is that? I mean, versus what? Conditional love, which is how we navigate the planet.
Of course, with conditions.
We conditionally love our car until it fails. We conditionally love quite a few things until they fail us. This is a stretch, but Robin Williams, one of the greatest, most beloved people on the planet, decides to check himself out for whatever reason. Might have been the influence of the drug. It might have been it was time for him to go, but whatever. But because we have conditional love about how people behave, when you mention his name, now people say, well, and he committed, whatever. As if chastising him for how he got off the stage. He's an incredible performance. And then he tripped as he went off the stage. And we go, I can't accept that. I'm just saying judgment, when we judge other people for what they wear, who they are, what they do.
It's the worst thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, we can't be in their shoes. So, and this is one other thing. When I was doing a session or filming a session with a woman who's a film producer, and what I do is I anonymize these sessions so they don't have to worry about people saying, really? This is what you saw? But here she was a skeptic, and she decided she would do this session because she was having an operation done, and she heard that hypnosis would be helpful. So that's why she agreed to do it. She really didn't believe anything I was saying about there being an afterlife. But, of course, as it happens, she, not only saw a previous lifetime, but went into a really profoundly, really amazing between life session, which is the word that Michael Newton coined, between lives. So here she was experiencing her journey between lives, being with her soul group, and she got to a point where she was in a vast library, for lack of a better word, and she was talking to this wise person, and she had only brought 3 questions to ask. They were all skeptical questions of a skeptic. She asked, is the universe a machine? She asked, what's the meaning of the shift in consciousness everybody seems to be so excited about? What's a shift in consciousness? What is that? And what or who is God? And I thought, well, those are great
questions. Yeah, great skeptic.
No?
Yeah, questions.
So here were the answers. Is the universe a machine? Yes, the spirit guide said. It's a mechanism. However, he said, it's sentient. So the mechanism of the universe is sentient. I took that to mean that if I learned something, the universe learns it. I'm not really sure, but that's what he said. The second thing was the shift in consciousness. He said, oh, you humans, I always love somebody who starts a sentence with you humans. You humans always feel the need to name things so that you'll get a better handle on it. He said, in terms of the cosmos, it's no big deal. I just love people who are like think in terms of the cosmos, like in terms of Saturn hitting Jupiter, well, that would be a big deal. This is no big deal. He said, but if you want to understand a shift in consciousness, imagine yourself a crab, a little crab walking along the ocean floor, and suddenly you stop and realize you're in an ocean. That's a shift in consciousness. And that it applied in my brain. I was thinking, well, we don't really see oxygen as an ocean, but it has all the same properties, clear water, fresh water, dirty water, et cetera, but we don't really see it that way. We cut down trees, which is like our lungs, our source of oxygen. We cut them down like they don't matter. A shift in consciousness is seeing like, oh my gosh, we can't do that. You see? All right, what or who is God? And I was on the edge of my seat by now. And he said, God is beyond the capacity of the human brain to comprehend. It's just not physically possible. And I thought, okay, well, he's either ducking the question or he's saying, like a computer can only take so much information. It just, stuff that's too much, it'll freeze, like Skype. But ultimately, he said, however, you can experience God. Really? And he said, and this made me think of, I met a bushman, a guy from South Africa that lived in the Kalahari. And we were talking about swimming pools. And he was like, I have no concept of what you're saying. Because he had spent his whole life looking for water. And the idea of jumping in a pool was beyond his conscious mind. He couldn't imagine what that would be like. So me explaining it or talking about it, it's kind of cool. And your whole body is floating, just not in his consciousness. So, but he could experience it and know it. So this is what my brain went to. So you can experience God. And he said, to experience God, you need to open your heart to everyone and to all things. And in that moment, I realized, that thing, God is love. It's a wonderful bumper sticker. But it's the flip side of that. Love, the thing that we can't define, that we can't agree upon what it is, but we can experience it. That's what God is, or the prime mover source of the universe, that interconnectedness between all of us. And when you open your heart to everyone, the guy pointing a gun at you, the guy who cut you off in traffic, the guy who stole your donut out of your hand while you were trying to take a bite, opening your heart to everyone and to all things. Trees. I mean, if your heart was open to all things, unconditional love, then you would have an experience of what God is. And near-death experiences, people often describe being back home and having that feeling of unconditional love, opening their hearts open to everyone and all things.
That's just incredible, and you know, and you touched on so much here as well, and I don't know, there's so much we could say, but you know, laughter as well. You know, you talked about laughter being important. I think that's so true. You know, it's not here. We know, yes, we may be talking about these deep subjects, but you know, having fun and enjoying ourselves is a major part of this experience as well.
Well, and when you know, my wife doesn't like it when I do this, but I say, look, it's a lot like being on a stage. We choose our roles and et cetera, et cetera. But you know, what makes a stage interesting? Well, you know, the essence of drama is conflict. That goes back to, you know, Aristophanes. No, I forget. But the essence of drama is conflict, and the idea that the people on stage who are the conflict people are the ones who draw our attention, right? However, while you're on stage, certainly the ones we remember the most are the ones that make us laugh, or the ones who get us out of our mind. When you're laughing, you're no longer thinking about whatever the troubles are that you have. And if you can make other people laugh, then you get that wave of benefit right in front of you. So I agree with you. These are, for most people's money, you talk about death or talk about the afterlife, you know, unless you're putting in the Twilight Zone music to accompany it, they just don't really get a handle on it. And my experience is, there's a lot of fun over there. There's a lot of laughs over there, because you no longer are carrying all that nonsense around. By the way, when I was in my first session and we got to a point where we were wrapping it up, and I said, is there anything that I can say to people from this experience that will be of help to them? You know, as if I could get some kind of a miracle sentence out of my guides.
Yep.
Because here I had taken this incredible journey. That's what it feels like. You know, you're like in deep space somewhere. I don't know, in another realm.
Did it feel quite foggy? Did it seem quite realistic, the pictures you were seeing?
At first it seemed really foggy, but then everything sort of came into clarity. And certain things were very clear. Some faces. Now, the guy I was talking to yesterday couldn't see a face, but he could just see energy and light. But listen, we sense everything differently. Everybody has a different experience. Like we were saying, libraries or whatever. So, but in my case, I was looking at 8 people. I can now see them in my mind's eye because they're now in part of my brain. But, you know, there were men and women, you know, some sort of androgynous, and they all had colors, and they all seemed very amused by me. So I thought that was interesting, because even while I was doing this session, I assumed, like anybody would, like, oh, I'm going into the afterlife and I'm going to experience something profound, and, you know, I better be serious.
Gonna play a harp, yeah.
Well, here we go, you know. And but ultimately I got there, and I had the feeling that you have just before the curtain goes up, if anyone has ever done theater, and you can hear the audience kind of like tittering out there, and they're excited, like something's going to happen. And then it was me. I was the guy who was now going to speak in front of my council. This is not something I've heard from anybody. Most people, when they find themselves in a room where they're talking to their council, they do have those great feelings of humility and worry that somehow they're going to be judged or they screwed up. And that's, you know, they're usually told as they enter, that's not the way to enter here. Just enter here, and we're here to help you. This is, you know, what these council members say. So the sentence before anybody falls off their chair or wakes up was, just let go. Just like the Disney song.
Just let go.
Yeah, like let it go.
And what is
just
that?
Let go. So what does that mean? Well,
Yeah.
in my mind's eye, let go of anger, let go of fear,
Oh, yes.
let go of jealousy, let go of rage, let go of sadness. You know, don't let go of your connections, of your heart, the people you love. No, you don't let that go, because that is who you are. but let go of those things that annoy you. Let go of those things that are, that are stressful. Now, there's ways to work on that, for humans. Meditation, I highly recommend. Tibetan meditation, I've studied it. Richard Davidson, the University of Wisconsin, has shown that meditation can alleviate depression or cure it. If you look up Richard Davidson, the University of Wisconsin, you'll see these studies that show meditation, where you're focusing on someone else, on healing someone else, actually cures you, actually changes the amygdala so that you're no longer depressed. So, just let go is a good way of giving you a really quick, it's a little hard. You're driving down the street, that guy cuts you off, just let go. But, stay in the lane. Don't drive off the road. Don't totally let go, but let go of that stuff.
How important is it to be here compared to being back home?
Listen, I think if you to go back to that construct of a play, we're all backstage, let's say, and we're all sitting around, and I say, so, Kevin, what are you doing? What's your next gig? And you go, I've had enough. That was really difficult. I had a stressful, it was such a problem. And then your friends are sitting around going, well, you were really good at that one thing. And remember that really fun thing you did, like when you went skydiving, and we were all with you. It was like, wow, we experienced that with you. So listen, here's the deal. Here's the deal, dude. I want you to come with me because I'm going to have this really cool adventure. These things may happen to you. You may not be there for a long time, but it's going to be a great adventure between the two of us. And you can say, this is what people say, you have free will at all times. You can say, no, I'm out. I have to rest. And your friends will go, yeah, you always say that. Come on, man, we need your help. And then, part of it is, remember, there's only a third of us here, right? So 2/3 are back there. And just think about that for a second. It's a little bit like sitting on a couch and eating popcorn and watching yourself on a screen about that big. I'm just saying, if 2/3 of us are back there at all times and a third of us are over here, so how emotionally involved are you watching yourself go through stuff? Well, some of it, yes. Oh, wow, that's so painful. But, that is just like the other 6 times we were down there and you had that same problem with that same person. I thought you were going to fix that, but I guess you didn't. Oh, it's okay. It's all right. And eventually you finish and you get backstage and everybody does this. Now, there's a time element, and this is important because when people talk about there is no time on the flip side or no time out there, it allows us this kind of like, well, then it doesn't really matter. Because if there's no time and everything's happening simultaneously, then who cares what? You see, there's a problem with that construct. I'm saying it's not true. It's a perspective thing. But let's just go with this for a minute. So in one of the sessions I was doing, a close friend of mine came in and did this session, and she didn't believe she could be under hypnosis, very skeptical, but she had this incredible lifetime where she remembered being an English captain of a ship for the East India Company in 1610. And by the way, the Old Bailey has all the records online of every lawsuit, and I found this name and this person's address in a lawsuit in 1610. Okay? But this guy was a ship captain. He was 25 years old. She described his life and dying on the ship, which was boarded by pirates. And then at some point, she goes back into the Between Lives realm, but of course, consciously, she's never been there, so it's all new. So she's describing like, oh, I'm on a hillside, and people are waving to me like, come on. And then she gets up to the top of the hill, and then she remembers, oh, this is my classroom. And outside is this class that she's the teacher of. She's teaching these people. Most classes are about the same topic, energy transference, how to focus your mind to move things or change things or alter things. So she's there with a class of about 26. And she says, it's funny, that lifetime felt like 15 minutes. Like I went out for a cigarette and now I'm back. The class was waiting for her. It's like she went, hold on a second, I have to go focus on this lifetime. And then she came back 15 minutes later. All right, so just for the sake of whatever, if 15 minutes equals a 25-year lifetime, well, then what's a 100-year lifetime? Well, it's about an hour, roughly. And when we look at it from that perspective, we talk about people who lived 2,000 years ago. For our perspective over there, it might feel like 20 movies ago. So an event that happened 500 years ago or 2,000 years ago might not seem so foreign or different to our conscious mind when you look at it that way, because time is certainly way different over there.
I mean, you are a man just full of so much knowledge in this field, and it's just great to have you on. You're just oozing of information here. You really are, and I don't really want to stop you because it's such quality stuff that you're saying. Just going back to what you said earlier on as well about every experience that anyone has in a regression is different in the sense that it's not always the same description. There's differences. In something I've brought forward in channeling as well, and actually I've got to say that a lot of things you've just said there, I wanted to say, yeah, that's what I've been told. That's what they've told me. But I've sort of been quiet and let you talk because
I'm sorry. I have a tendency to just
no, it's great. No, it's good. No, absolutely, no problem. But
what are some of the things that felt similar to you?
Well, I can go in. I'll go into this just a second. But here's one. In the sense that every truth is different. There is not just one truth. We all have an individual truth, and that when we get to the spirit side or home, whatever we may want to personify it as, that we are still trying to work it out on that level. That's what I've been told. We're still trying to work out our truth of what this is all about. Yes, we may be more in tune with who we were before we came down here, but even on that level, they're still trying to work it out, and there are infinitive levels to go to. So even on the level that we initially go to, they're channeling to higher levels as well. That's what I've been told. And there is there's healing that comes down from these higher levels and communication that happens. It's like we're trying to work towards something, some bigger infinitive picture, you could say. And that the reality there or here, well, maybe there is no difference. It's just we don't understand it. There's no words to give it justification of what it is, or to give it any meaning. But it is just as real as it is here, or maybe actually we're more aware. Other things. Laughter. You've mentioned about that. Yeah, they talk to me about how important it is to have a laugh, and being spiritual is not being serious neither.
Boring. Yeah. Exactly.
Just so much of what you've said.
To make a note, a note about what you were just saying about learning, about these other realms and the infinite possibilities. And in my experience, my own personal experience, when I sort of get to a point where I discuss or talk about like what's the architecture, how many levels are there? We do have a tendency to do what that one spirit guide said, which is we try to put things into words, whereas they don't communicate over there usually from just syntax, because it's so open to interpretation. The idea of multiverses and multi-lives, we get into this, we get caught up in the trying to define it, and over there, as I've heard from many different people and my own experience, they'll describe something to you, an event, by like touching you on the shoulder, and you see the whole image of the event, so you experience it like firsthand. And it's a way of avoiding using these archaic sounds that we take to be meaning in words. I'm just saying. So even there, you want to bring it back to the microcosm, which is what's my experience. And when you sort of examine, like, what's my journey, I'm not really, like, you're just what you're saying. It's individual journeys. I'm just focused on what I've learned. And when you get back to the other side, you see your loved ones and soulmates, and you might experience all of your previous lifetimes. maybe not right away. It might take a while. You might still be here working stuff out. For example, there's a ghost that was interviewed, a person who remembered a lifetime as a ghost, meaning she had died and then didn't go back home for a long time. And Michael Newton interviewed her in one of his books. And he said, why did you stick around? And she said, it's just something I felt comfortable doing, going outside and standing on the porch waiting for my husband to return. And he said, so what was the process of actually returning when you finally went home? And she said, my spirit guide showed up and he pointed to his wrist as if to say, have you had enough time? Like, you have friends waiting for you back there. And that was her process. Now, I thought that was hilarious. There's no watches over there. And why would this gesture today mean something? But, when you're outside of time, that gesture, I guess, means the same thing to everybody. But that was her own journey. And it doesn't make it any less or more important. So when you experience your journey and the stuff you're going through, it's loss of a child, loss of a parent, loss of a loved one, those are powerful, real things that are hard to get our minds around. And I'm not mitigating it in any way, but I am saying that when you sort of shift your perspective a little bit to know that we don't die, nobody dies. And if we can't die, then therefore we will not only see our loved ones again, but we can still communicate with them now. That's really a profoundly powerful tonic.
So what about those people?
Methodology.
Sure. What about those people who are having it really hard right now on themselves? They're very depressed. They're not happy with their life. Everything's wrong. They may not see it from a spiritual perspective, but even those that do see it from a spiritual perspective, it's still just as difficult, I think, sometimes. And yet they want to check out early. They want to leave. They've had enough. Yeah. Why is it so important to want to stay here? And I feel it is. Because we've chosen to be here. That would be my answer.
Yeah, of course. And, I can just give you some examples, which is, it's one point there was the description of what it's like to shift from over there to here, to move your energy from back there into a body. And the description I got was, imagine being in an F-14, a fast fighter jet, and you're dropping down into a car, a Ferrari, that's moving like at 200 miles an hour. And when you climb into the cockpit, you start working on the toggles, and not all of them hook up. You thought they would, but when you got here, like, they don't all work. Or you knew that choosing this lifetime, you were going to have some depression, and you figured, well, I can overcome that. But when you get here, as we know, once you're in the experience of something, you really feel like, I can overcome that. I feel different. I feel, etc., etc. But if you can just have faith, and this is a faith issue, of knowing that your spirit guides, and everyone is with you at all times. They're aware of what you're going through at all times. And when people are doing these sessions, they'll say, so how am I doing? And the guides and the council always say, you're doing exactly what you signed up for. Now, just what you're saying, some people get to a point where they're like, I can't take this anymore. And I use an example of when people get back to their loved ones who checked out early, the loved ones may say, dude, what'd you do that for? You didn't wait till Wednesday. Because Wednesday, the airline tickets to Rome were coming, and we were all going to connect up there. I've lived my whole life to wait for that trip to Rome so that you and I could connect, and you screwed it up. Here we were on stage, and you suddenly just jumped off stage, and you ruined the play. But generally, people don't report that. The person who did the experience has that feeling. Oh my God, I screwed up. I forgot that in the third act, we were all going to do this thing together on Wednesday, if I just waited till Wednesday. And your loved ones always have some variation of saying, look, we love you. Everything's okay. You're okay. You're back home. We'll work it out. We'll do another lifetime again where we'll do all this stuff. It'll take a lot of work, but we'll do it because, you want to learn those lessons. Okay. So I was talking about this in Virginia Beach. A woman came up to me after the talk and she said, I'm a Wednesday person. I said, what do you mean? She said, I was really depressed. I went online and found out how to do myself in. And I went down to the hardware store to buy the chemicals. And she was in line with her hands full of the stuff that was going to do her in. And she overheard these two boys behind her talking. And they were two young guys from Uganda whose parents had been killed, in the strife over there. And they were at a loss of what to do and where to go and how to be. And she just turned and realized in that moment, this is why I'm here. And now she runs an orphanage in Uganda where she takes care of these kids. She had waited till Wednesday. The reason you signed up to be here on the planet, very difficult to fathom, very difficult to understand, but you did it. You signed up for a reason. You're here for a reason. And it may not just be to help you, it may be to help somebody else. And you have to allow that to be a possibility in your life, no matter how depressed you are. And like I say, there is a way out of depression by going to Richard Davidson's work at the University of Wisconsin and understanding the Tibetan meditation called Tonglen, Tonglen, which can cure or alleviate symptoms of depression. It's not an SSRI drug, even though I know a lot of people that works for them, but a percentage of people it doesn't work for. This this helpful meditation will help people that are depressed. What I'm trying to say, it's not just a matter of me saying, hey, it's all going to be okay. You can be proactive. You can learn a way out of something that's very difficult to get out of. If that makes sense. Not very funny, but
I just love the way you put that. That is the best way I've heard it put for a long time. Thank you for that. I mean that as well. You've, like I say, you're oozing with great information here, and I would say as well, I've come, obviously a lot of people in this field, and this whole thing, as you just said there about the people that you're meant to be helping, or that one person, whatever it is, just on Wednesday or around the corner that you're supposed to be doing that you don't know just yet. As Edgar Cayce would say, the great sleeping prophet, we are all here to be of service. It's one of the most important things. We don't have to be, but it is the way that we should try to be, because it makes you so much more fulfilled than anything else could.
Yeah. Now I got to say, I've been to the Cayce Institute in Virginia Beach, and I've met the guys who run that and stuff. They're a wonderful group. But I use Edgar as an example of that premise that I was saying. We're not omniscient over there. In his work, he was channeling or connecting to either a doctor who used to be on the planet, or a doctor who is over there, or his higher self, which, because we didn't have the nomenclature of how to describe who he was connecting to, that's why he was so successful at healing so many people around the planet. People would write him letters and say, I have this illness, I have this problem. He'd go into trance, and he'd find the cure, find the how to alleviate the problem. But he wasn't omniscient, you see? So when it came to predicting the future, he was pretty much 100% inaccurate. California falling into the ocean, all these things that, for whatever reason, he was seeing, but he might not have been seeing it on this planet. He might have been seeing it through the eyes of somebody who normally is on another realm. I don't know. But the answer is, so when you examine Edgar Cayce's work, and believe me, he healed so many different people by accessing this information, which I'm talking about, which, hacking the afterlife is what he was doing, healing people by hacking the afterlife. But when it came to predictions, this is a key thing to understand. The future is not set. We have free will. 2/3 of me is back there. Now, I had this just yesterday, this hacking the afterlife conversation. I said, so if the future's not set, if we're talking about predictability, and of course some mediums give you a likely outcome because they can see maybe possible multiple outcomes and they pick one and that's the accurate one. But as we know, they're not always. Otherwise, lottery numbers would happen every single day. Of course, when I do this work, I must say I always ask a medium, or I've started interviewing mediums because I found that they can take me to the flip side, and instead of sitting there trying to to see if they're real, I just skip down and go right into the information I'm looking for. But anyway, I always ask them for lottery numbers. And one day I said, so could I get some lottery numbers? And, this woman just said, A, B, C, D, F, G, the numbers. And I wrote them down. And I went and played them. And I won $1. And I heard in my head, you weren't specific about how much you wanted to win. You just wanted to win. So I won $1. But anyway, back to Edgar Cayce. I just wanted to say, I'm not knocking him because, people do this thing of putting people on pedestals. I'm just trying to ferret out what's happening. What is what's the architecture of what we're talking about?
I will say this. I mean, the one thing that the ARE does do well, and I've got to say this as I've got to know it a lot more, is that it is a healing center, and I think that's primarily what any good medium is a healer. And
exactly. I'm not mitigating it in any way. I'm just saying,
sure.
A lot of people seek out mediums because they want to know the future.
Isn't this another problem with mediums? Not with them, but with us in a sense. People that go see mediums. Is that what's my love life going to be like? Is my loved one okay in the afterlife? And that's all great and everything to get, to ask these questions. But what about the deeper questions that the mediums could reach as well? What is my purpose? What is the meaning?
How do we fix the planet?
How do we fix the planet? What is the meaning? The meaning of all this, or deeper questions than what we do ask sometimes. I find that I've spoken to a lot of mediums, of course, and they hate that as well. That it's always just such a mundane, low-level questions, and there's so much information that can be tapped into.
Well, and it's interesting. Yes, and I agree with you. I think that it's an opportunity for us to shift the construction of the mediumship questioning. So instead of, and this is, I got a call from Jennifer Schaefer. She was a wonderful medium here in Los Angeles, who's a fan of my books, and my first thought was, okay, I've been saying these things about mediums, they're not 100% accurate, and there's this, and just what we were talking about. They're fantastic in terms of talking to people who are no longer on the planet, but in terms of predicting the future, it's almost like a flip a coin thing. So Jennifer called me up, and I took it upon myself as an opportunity to interview her. So instead of going into her office and saying, which she does, and she's really good. I mean, she works with the FBI over here, off the record, but she works with the FBI on helping missing persons cases. And she does it pro bono, and she's so good that they've flown her around the country to help solve quite a few, you can't solve everything because maybe you didn't sign up to solve things, but she has been that successful. But anyway, so now I'm in her office, and instead of letting her say, oh, so-and-so has appeared, and, these relatives of yours are here, I say, yes, I know, great, tell them I said hi, here's who I want to talk to. And then I filmed her, and I was specifically saying, I want to speak to like this particular person. And she was able to say, no, I can't access that person. And then I would say, all right, well, let's go over and talk to this person. And then she would say, okay, I'm getting a sense of this. And then I would just ask specific questions.
Interesting.
In my case, I've done quite a bit of research about Amelia Earhart. This is a whole nother show.
Yep, which we're struggling for time right now.
Yeah, we don't have the time for that. But in a nutshell, I have, done a lot of work in that area. And in this case, I was asking specific questions about stuff that only I know about because I've been doing the research for 30 years. And she was able to answer them all correctly.
Incredible.
So that allowed me then to, expand this research. So when you find a medium that you kind of can really work with, try to do those things of asking not just for yourself, but ask for the planet. Like, how can we help other people?
Which is what I love about your work as well. Ask for the planet, and I think right now you can't be, unless you've been in a cave for a long time, this planet, we're in a funny place right now with world politics and all other sorts of issues that we've got. And we seem to be doing it the hardest way. We always seem to do things the hardest way. And it doesn't need to be so difficult sometimes. That's what I get told in my channeling all the time about how difficult we do things.
We make things, yeah.
Yeah, we make things. And... it's the information that we can bring through from, like, for example, for what you're looking at doing, the information that can help improve our life now. When people say, I'm a hard science, I just don't need to look at that stuff, it doesn't exist, it's all a load of poo-poo. The thing is, though, that, to ignore it is just as bad. And to look at these subjects and try to improve the moment now has got to be a gracious thing for everyone, to bring in potentially maybe not just lost knowledge, but knowledge that we have forgotten, in a sense.
And beyond that, it's data. So if you ask somebody, and like I said, not everyone's omniscient. So let's say that we do this construct of I'm talking to Kevin, and I say, Kevin, let's ask your spirit guide the answer to this question. How do we transfer salt water into fresh water for pennies or for very little money? What's the easiest process to do that? Now, you may answer that question. You may say, well, you do A, B, C, D, F, G, and follow this process. And I would make those notes. And now I'm talking to somebody else on the other side of the world, a guy in India, and I ask him, I said, can we access your spirit guide? Let's ask him or her, what's the process involved? And they may say, it's a process like this, and it's not the same. But eventually, if you get 20 of those, somebody's going to figure out, oh, if we do this, that makes it an easier process.
Yes.
And so it's not about believing in what the afterlife is telling us, but it's taking what the afterlife is telling us into a data set as something that we can access later on to say, wait a minute, that's interesting. I'm surprised to hear that. I hadn't really thought of it that way.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing about the work that the work that you're doing as well. Okay. Moving on just a bit as well. Well, sort of going backwards in one way. With religion, okay, because obviously, it's a planet of polar opposites that we're on, and religion does play a large part in this. Why does a soul choose to have a experience in a religion that's really telling it, and this goes for most religions, that the truth is contained in one book only, and if you go against that book, there will be a repercussion for that. And if you're gay as well, of course, then that's straight on the bonfire. Then,
well, listen.
Why would a soul do that?
Well, it's a funny construct that here we are talking about books that were written, thousands of years ago. I don't know if you saw this just the other day. There was a researcher who was in a British library somewhere, and he found the notebooks that was written by one of the scribes, one of the guys who translated the Bible from Greek and Latin and Aramaic to English. And it was his notes, his extensive notes of like, what does this word mean? And, there's a consensus in the room that it doesn't mean this. And, they debated it. I can't think of his name, but Samuel somebody. But the point is, humans taking words, narrowing them down to give import, then putting it in a book, and the book sitting on a shelf and being opened up by certain people, and then after so many centuries, people opening up the book and saying, you didn't follow these words exactly, burn them at the stake. Now, the guy who was doing the translation would be like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? I'll give you a couple examples. Just in the Catholic Bible, which I'm familiar with, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. That was the Holy Trinity as I was raised. And eventually ghost was turned to the word spirit. The original Aramaic is pneuma, which means to breathe. So it was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, or breath of life. So what is the breath of life? From my mind, it's what consciousness is. So if you think of what the Holy Trinity is, it's, let's call it something along the lines of the creator or creators or source and people on the planet. And the thing that connects source to the people on the planet is that holy spiros, the thing, the breathing, the thing that makes us animated, that is who we are. All right, well, so that's just one example of something that was, mistranslated. As simple as that. It became the Holy Ghost, and you always had some idea of a bird flying around that was some kind of a ghost. So when you look at it from that point of view, you see how people, they're trying to get at the truth, but they make the truth something so sacrosanct or in concrete that it's not worth noting. Now, in Michael Newton's work, and this comes up because when we talk about religion, we generally talk about, you know, the good we do for each other and helping each other, but there's this other thing that religion likes to talk about that we aren't talking about, but it is there, which is Satan or evil. And, you know, listen, Satan, according to my teachers at Loyola University, you know, he was only he was like the brother of Jesus in some religious ideas, and then eventually he only shows up around the plague as the master of all evil. Up until then, he was just a fallen angel. So, you know, even his persona changed over time. But in this research, Michael Newton's work and other work, Dr. Helen Wambach, who did hypnotherapy out of New Jersey, she had the identical results, a clinical psychologist, people under hypnosis, saying that in general, evil doesn't exist on the flip side. Not that that's a good or a bad thing. It just doesn't exist. There is no hell, or there's no reports of any kind of hell. People who have near-death experiences do report having sometimes, depending upon their focus, like we were just talking about, from their own point of view, and if they've spent their whole life worrying about it, they do experience something that's hellacious. But eventually, that changes. And then, in terms of Michael Newton's work, there is a case of a minister that he was doing a session with, and the minister came to him, and during his between life session, he suddenly saw Satan coming at him, and he was terrified, and he was like screaming and crying in his chair. And he said, so Newton said, well, describe him. He said, well, he's got horns and his eyes are glowing and he's breathing fire. And because Newton had spent a lot of time doing this work and had never run into him before, said, well, describe how he's dressed. And the minister said, oh, he's wearing tennis shoes. And Newton said, well, that's kind of odd, don't you think? And in that moment, the minister then saw that it was his spirit guide who had put on this mask, put on this visual to scare the heck out of the minister. And in that moment, he realized that's what he had been doing his entire life with religion and scaring people. And at that moment, he realized that it was a construct so that he could gain power over people and fame and whatever else he needed for his ego. So the point being, these accounts that people have of what religion should or shouldn't be aren't in the data. When you get actually to the data part, you find unconditional love, you find people choose to do things out of some reason that we can't fathom because we're not part of their soul group. People experience things from their own point of view. And all we can do is help them while they're in their throes of whatever that is they're doing, knowing that they may know. I'll give you one more unusual example. I got contacted by an attorney in a Western state, and she said that in her practice of the past 30 years, she represents second-degree murderers, people who have killed someone drunk driving.
By mistake, is that,
something
yeah?
else,
Yeah.
And she said that in every case, her client had been visited by, either through a vision, a dream, or a manifestation of their victim, saying something along the lines of, I'm okay and I can help you.
Yeah.
And I said, what? What do you mean 100%? What do you mean? And she said, in every case that and she said she'd represented over 30 years, more than 100. And then I had her give me 4 cases that I could verify. But in each case, these people had no way to process this information. The person they had killed, even one was like a young boy that the guy had run over drunk driving, and he'd just seen him for a split second, but there he was. He's describing him in his room, seeing him, every night after night. Needless to say, because this is not a topic of conversation anybody has, and you can only say it to your lawyer, because certainly the family doesn't want to hear it.
No,
Nobody wants to hear it. But the truth is still there. That is still what that reality is. None of them could process it, and none of them, I mean, she couldn't help, other than she would say, listen. She'd say, listen to what they have to say. But, these, in 4 of the cases, they, one guy committed suicide, another guy became drunk, and et cetera, et cetera. My point is, I'm okay, and I can help you. Just focus on that for a second. Your loved ones are okay, and they can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. It speaks words, doesn't it? And the healing that can take place, maybe in that moment when that message comes through, which I suppose that's what it's supposed to be, a bit of a healing period as well. Because imagine the guilt that's going through someone's, mind when when they're in that situation. Very, very difficult.
Well, I didn't mean to duck your religion question.
No.
Religion is we do a lot of things of syntax. So what is religion? It's faith. That's what people will tell you. It's faith. And then the people who have a religious experience or a mystical experience or an apotheosis in their life, it's no longer a matter of belief. They don't believe or disbelieve. They know because like experience, like jumping in the pool. They experienced it. They know what it's like. What's one of the questions I ask people, like, when did you first consciously know that you were going to do the work you're doing? I was talking to Mario Beauregard, who's a neuroscientist. He used to be at the University of Montreal, now he's at the University of Arizona. His book's called Brain Wars. This is a guy who uses MRI, so while people are under hypnosis or having a spiritual experience, he can say what's going on in their brain. Is there some kind of God spot, which, as he's shown me, is not the case. People that he's actually done experiments where people are having memories of previous lifetimes, but the memory doesn't exist in their brain. They're seeing it, experiencing it, but it's not coming from here.
It's like the brain is a receiver, isn't it? And and not the.
But in his case, his first conscious thought was of he's going to be doing the kind of work he's doing is when he was 12. He was out in the woods and he sat on a rock, and suddenly he experienced everything being connected for about 5 or 6 minutes. A profound feeling of unconditional love and being connected to everything. And so from 12 on, he's been trying to figure out what was that experience, what was that process. And you find it in literature quite a bit.
Eckhart Tolle speaks about the same experience as well.
Yeah, okay. And Giordano Bruno, who was considered like one of the first philosopher scientists, he was burned at the stake for his views, but he talks about having an out-of-body experience, about seeing the planets while he's floating through space, and that's where he realized that the sun, the earth, et cetera, which eventually got him burned at the stake. And there's people like Sir Francis Younghusband, who was one of the guys who led the British troops in Tibet in 1906. As he's leaving Tibet, he has this apotheosis where he sees that we're all connected. And in that moment, he decides he's never going to pick up a gun again. And he creates the Council of World Religions, which is still in existence to this day. So the idea of have you ever heard of the overview effect? It's something that astronauts have when they're traveling around the planet. And when they come back, they report that they no longer can see borders. They no longer see people as anything but humans. They no longer see them as delineated or differentiated. It's something you can look up, and there's a short film called The Overview Effect. It's on Wikipedia, and there's also this film. But it's what I'm finding in this research is when people have these out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences or between life sessions, they come back from the experience seeing the planet from this different perspective. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to show people that you can see the planet from a different perspective on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, yeah, I've got so many more questions, but I know we're well over time right now.
All right.
I mean,
go ahead.
We were going to do but we could just give it a go, doing a bit of an experiment, actually.
Sure, we can. We can.
Yeah, I mean, as people out there know, I've been channeling for a bit now, only for a year, not even a year yet. And I don't mind, doing this and giving it a go, see what comes through.
So, let me ask you, in terms of your meditations, I'm sorry, you were saying channeling. Tell me, what's the process? What do you do?
Yeah, when I channel, I'll go into take a few deep breaths, and then I have the analogy that it's almost like there's a circular tunnel, and a door opens, and I'm greeted in by people, and then there's a connection made. Then
Okay, so can you do me a favor?
yes,
Let's go to where those people are.
okay. Well,
And
I'll take a
you
couple
can
of deep breaths.
Sorry?
I'll take a couple of deep breaths to do that
Okay.
to bring
Take a couple
myself
deep
in this.
breaths. And you can close your eyes if you want, whatever makes it easier for you to go there. And so breathe deeply. I'm not a hypnotherapist. I'm a filmmaker and a journalist. So I'm not somebody who's trained in hypnotherapy. And I highly recommend the Michael Newton method because people there have been trained. But what my premise is that these people that you see, not only do they exist, and you could argue they exist relatively, but they do exist somewhere in your consciousness perhaps, or in some other place. So I want you to sort of focus in on getting to the end of that tunnel. And as you walk in outside of the tunnel, get to a place where you're now seeing these people. And who do you see? How many of them are there?
I believe there's three.
There's three, okay.
I
And
believe
like I
so.
say, whatever I ask you, don't judge it. Just allow whatever comes to your mind to be the first thing that comes to your mind, because we can certainly examine it later. So there's three people there. Now, are they male or female or something else?
No, they're almost golden beings.
Okay, very good. Golden beings, very good. And so is there one that's sort of more leading than the others, or are they all kind of equal in stature or import?
I'd say they're all equal, but there's one that's sort of making a connection.
Okay, very good. And could we ask him, her, this golden person to come forward?
Yes.
Yes, okay, very good. And just for the sake of our experiment between Richard and Kevin here, and thank you for coming forward, can you give us some kind of a name that we can refer to you, and just put some name in Kevin's mind that's easy for us to access so that we just have a reference for you?
I am part of the group called The One.
The One, okay, but I understand that. That could be the colors that you're wearing on your jacket, the One. But just in terms of you, give me a name for you, if I can, a first name, and whatever comes to mind.
Edgar.
Edgar, very good. Thank you so much, Edgar. I appreciate that. Just for the sake of our discussion, your name may not be Edgar. It may be a subconscious name in Kevin's mind, but it's okay either way. So for the purposes of our conversation, Edgar, I appreciate it. Now, let me ask you, Edgar, can I ask you some direct questions that you can have Kevin answer for you?
Of course.
Very good. So let me ask you, first, how do you think Kevin's doing? Is this his work and what he's doing in connecting people in this way? What's your opinion about his path and journey?
His path was one of free will, as we all have free will on our path.
Oh, very good. Well, let me ask you this, Edgar. Have you ever incarnated on our planet?
Yes.
Okay, and when was the time period of your last incarnation, if you don't mind me asking?
I passed away in the early 40s.
In the early 40s. Excellent. Okay, Edgar, I appreciate that. And can you give Kevin a visual image of where that was in the 1940s? What continent it might have been on?
America.
America. Okay, very good. And if I could be so impertinent, can you tell me what a city would be that you might have been in?
Virginia.
Virginia. Okay, very good. Okay, it's a state. Excellent, excellent. Okay, okay, Edgar, very good. And so let me ask you, Edgar, in your lifetime on the planet, what kind of work did you do?
I was a healer.
You were a healer. Very good. All right. And so I'm familiar with a few healers that lived in Virginia in the 1940s that were named Edgar. And I'm going to assume, just for this, the sake of this conversation and clarification, that you are this person. So let me ask you, Edgar, why was it that when you predicted things in the future, they didn't occur?
There are strands of possibilities. So what I mean by that is that there are infinite number of possibilities.
I see.
Infinite number of multi-universes, you could say.
Yes.
And with each gift that one has, one is only as good as they are able to tune in to the correct frequency, the correct
Excellent.
light, in a sense.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And please don't take my question as being impertinent. It was something I was curious about, and I assumed that was going to be the answer, but I appreciate you allowing us to hear it. Now, let me ask you something.
Not all predictions have come true.
I'm sorry?
But not all predictions have come. Not all predictions have come to pass.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. I think so. And I think that's wonderful that we're able to access possible future choices, and that can allow us to change them or alter them if we need to. But let me ask you a specific question. In your lifetime, when you were channeling or trans-channeling people or helping people, you were accessing a doctor? Is that correct? Who was this person that you were accessing? Was this someone that you were, or is this someone else?
A group. There's
a group.
A group.
I see. A group. And can I ask you to do me a huge favor at this moment? Can you bring that group into Kevin's consciousness so he can see how many people are in that group?
Of course.
Thank you. How many people are in that group that you were accessing?
8 or more.
8 or more. Okay, very good. And primarily, was there one person, or is this, or was there one person, or were all 8, would they weigh in and help you with your prognosis?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Very good. Okay. And were these people, this group of 8, were they people who had incarnated on the planet or not?
No.
No. Okay. Very good. And were they people who had incarnated on other planets or other realms?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so they I'm just going to assume, were they bringing their expertise to helping you, Edgar, while you were here on the planet, to heal people with their expertise?
You could say that.
Okay, very good. Now let me ask you, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to access information from you, and you can help people here. In terms of, I'm going to ask you a specific question about the healing light of the universe and how healing occurs. Is there any way that people on the planet can access that light, that healing light, or what is the best method for people to try to access that healing light?
All the light is contained within each of us. All of everything, all of consciousness is contained within each of all of us.
Okay.
All one has to do is go towards the light within us.
I see.
Move towards the light within oneself. The light of divinity, of creation, of allness, of all-knowingness, and use and bring that light around us. Light is all we are, is all there is everything.
Cool. Well, let me ask you, in terms of being able to focus that lens, because of course, in the human condition, we have a lot of distractions about that keep us from being able to access that light. What would you describe as a good method for us to be able to access that healing light?
It is very simple. It is the use of meditation, the use of quiet space, the use of calling your divinity towards you, calling the oneness of who you truly are towards you, your true soul self, your Father in heaven, you may call it some, or the oneness of the universe, and using quiet space to bring that towards you.
Sorry. I would just, if you could, because people who are listening in, I just want to give them a 1, 2, 3. Like if you could just walk us through someone who is not feeling well or has an illness and they need to focus this light. If you could just give us a step-by-step,
absolutely
simple process.
Just focus the light on the part of yourself that needs the healing the most. It may be an emotional healing, it may be a bodily healing. Use the light, focus it on the area of the body that needs the healing the most. Do this even once a day for a minimum of 15 minutes on the area, even using your own hands to focus the light, and you will see a transformation over a period of a number of weeks towards that area or less.
Excellent. I think that's a really, really sound and practical advice. Let me ask you this, Edgar. Have you incarnated since your demise on the planet? Are you here?
Aspect of me is here.
I see. Okay. And anyone in particular that I guess that would be too much to focus on, but what aspects? What aspects of you?
This aspect.
Healing? I'm sorry?
This aspect of me.
Oh, this aspect. Okay, very good. Very good. And in terms of the people who sort of work in your name, and there are quite a few, your organization is worldwide. And is there anything you would like to say to the people who are focused on your work and the stuff that you've done?
I never once dreamed that my work, or the aspect of my work, or the aspect that was me doing that work, would ever have accomplished what was or is still here now in this time frame. I would never have believed in my wildest dream that such things would be done in my name, and I am most grateful and humble for what has been done and the healing aspect of what has been done in my name. The only message I can give at this moment, as has been said through this entity, is that there are many truths, there are many mansions. There is not just one truth. There are many ultimate truths to this.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this information. It's so unusual, and it's really great to meet you. I mean, even the construct that we are here. I'm in Santa Monica, and where are you? I mean, just in terms of a physical space, are you in another realm, or are you just outside of our realm?
I am outside of time and space as you understand it, with your science as it is at this moment.
Okay.
I'm in a dimension that you could call home, a dimension that some would call the spirit world. Now, channeled through this entity has been the message, as we have always said, as the one has always carried, that there are multiple, infinitive, if you could please, dimensions to go to. And I am I would class it as a lower level dimension compared to those I have channeled in that dimension.
Yes. Well, that's excellent. I appreciate that. So let me ask you this, just on behalf of those individuals that are on this lower dimension. If somebody wanted to access your information or talk to your group of 8 healers and stuff, what would be the best method for them to connect to that healing group to get that information that you have?
You see, we try to communicate through many people. There are many channels to work through that we can try to work through. This particular channel now that you're speaking through has agreed before coming to this level to hold this work up, hold the light of this work up. It was a choice to do it or not. There are many other channels that we can speak through, but we are currently speaking through this channel at this time. That does not mean when the usefulness of this body is gone that we will not seek to go through other channels. That is one method. Another method is if you believe, if you trust, if you know, if you are true to yourself, then you can speak to us and we will come through you. You have to really have the truth in you, that it is your truth that we are speaking with you. If it is not of truth to yourself, we cannot communicate with you. Your vibration of truth lies in our vibration. When the two meet, communication can take place.
I see. Very interesting. That's fascinating. Let me ask you, just in terms, because your work and methodology seems to be in the healing arts, in terms of healing individuals and people. In terms of our planet, we have a lot of issues with carbon. We have a lot of issues with climate change. We have issues with salt water turning to fresh water. Is there anything you can help guide us in terms of something we might focus on to help others on the planet?
Yes, of course. The help that you seek is the help of love and peace, and knowing that the planet you live on can stem from a more peaceful existence than it is now. We have always said through this entity how hard and how difficult you humans, we shall call, do things. We have always said through this entity that we do not care of the outcome to a point, but we do care that you harm yourself and the planet by doing things the most difficult way possible. If you came from a fuller understanding of oneness and love towards your fellow man, half the problems you have now would be eliminated overnight. There is not enough. There is not enough. There is always enough. Enough for everything, for everyone. Enough peace, enough love, enough justice, enough knowingness. But you have cut yourselves off from your true nature, which is partly the essence of incarnation, you could say. It doesn't have to be so painful, though. There is an easier way for mankind to treat itself and others. Just look at the animal kingdom for a refreshment treatment.
Okay. All right. Now, I got a weird construct for you. This goes along the lines of prediction, but it also goes along the lines of helping someone on the planet. So there's someone listening to this show right now, listening to this interview with you, who, if they suddenly won a lot of money or had access to a lot of money, they could help the planet. I wonder, is it possible, or is it just too childish for me to ask, could you give us lottery numbers? Now, I'm not being specific about what the lottery is, because who knows? Someone out there listening to this in some other country may play these numbers and win. But if they do, we hope that they would then take that money and put it back into healing the planet. So, is this too much to ask?
There is nothing that we can do to affect the outcomes of such predictions. As you all understand, this level of incarnation is done with a complete free will from the level of incarnation where this is being channeled from. We are not able to interfere with contracts that were laid at a space and time beyond where this communication is taking place now.
Oh, come on, Edgar. Give it up. I want some numbers. I'm teasing you. I just wanted to see what kind of sense of humor you might have back there. Are you having any laughs back there with your friends?
You have to understand that coming through this nature of reality, in a sense, is very difficult to maintain. I may be laughing at the state that I'm in where this is being channeled from.
Right.
But coming through a platform like this, through this entity, is almost impossible to maintain. But
that kind of focus. Yeah, I understand.
It is
it's just in my nature to see if I can get you to laugh.
Also difficult to, even right now, there is blockages in this communication, as you can see. Sometimes it is free flowing as it is now. Other times it is very difficult for the message to come through. We find your comedy quite pleasing.
I get it. It needs to be more focused. I appreciate that. I just wanted to add a little levity to this unusual conversation that we're having from wherever you are outside of time to wherever I am, which is basically inside of time. So, I mean, it's wonderful that you're here to be able to do this. Now, is there any kind of feeling or sensation that you can place into Kevin's mind or body at this moment so that he understands that when he feels this experience that you're communicating with him? Could you place a feeling or some kind of sensation in him, in his conscious mind right now?
Yes.
Thank you. And so in Kevin's world, I would say that when this occurs, this is something for him to pay attention, almost like an alarm or a signal or a loving gesture, that whatever he's experiencing or seeing or sensing or being or hearing, it's something for him to pay extra attention to.
Yes.
Very good. Now, let me ask you, Edgar, do you have any questions for us?
The only question we would have for you is today, how much have you loved yourself and others around you?
It's a good question, Edgar. All right, here's the most important question I can ask you today. Who is going to win the World Series? I made you laugh. It wasn't easy. I found a way. That's okay. You don't have to answer. I know who's going to win the World Series. It's okay. You don't have to answer. I just wanted to see if I could get you to laugh. That was my motivation. So I got a chuckle out of Edgar, who's outside of time. How about you, Kevin? Do you have any questions for Edgar? Something specific that you've been wrestling with? Maybe even personal?
I would only ask, probably, God, that's difficult. How many more of them are there that Edgar's in contact with? Yeah, but I suppose that's been answered, really, hasn't it?
Well, I think when you're outside of time, you can be anywhere simultaneously. It's a time construct. You could be in 1,000 or 1,000,000 minds at the same time because you're no longer constrained by a linear path.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
all right, Edgar, one more thing. Is there anything that you can ask us to do on, let's say, on the planet's behalf? Because from your perspective, you understand our journey and our path better than we do. So is there any one thing that you would like to sort of an admonition or just a sentence of some direction of something that could help us back here?
To know that you are loved unconditionally from the spirit side, as some would call it, and to give as much light and love to the world as you can do by just sending love and light to all those out there, even those that you may accuse of causing atrocities. Send the love and light out to them, the ones that need it the most, and the ones suffering in silence, whatever that silence may be. Send the love and light to them by just projecting it in your mind. Thoughts are creative. Thoughts are reality. Thoughts create reality. Thoughts are more powerful than you can imagine. Think and choose wise and careful thoughts. Much love.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you, Edgar. And Kevin, thank you for taking us on this quite unusual journey.
Oh,
Did you have any idea that
wow.
Edgar was going to be somebody at the end of the tunnel?
Yes, I've dealt with him before.
I see.
He's been coming through the channeling quite often. But there's a number of them that come through, and Edgar's one of them. And just recently, we even had Eric come through as well.
Oh,
which was
great.
quite
Excellent.
unusual.
Well, we know Eric. We love Eric.
Yeah.
Eric's hilarious.
Oh, he swears quite a bit.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
Excellent.
I
You
don't.
mean he came through separately from the session you did with Elisa, or he came
Yes.
through during that session?
No, he's been coming through for me. He's been coming through
excellent.
for me.
Very good. Well, you got to write all this down.
I don't really, just I can't really explain what's going on here right now, or what's just happened just there. Right, I can't explain it. There's a big part of me that feels I've made it all up, and I don't feel silly for it because I've gone beyond that stage now. Because to be honest, to do it,
if you allow that to be the construct, I either made it up, which is possible,
yeah,
or I didn't make it up,
yeah,
which is possible.
Yeah.
And there's also the possibility that parts are made up and parts are not. But the end result is the message you take away. So if your subconscious is so clever to come up with something like, you are loved unconditionally from the other side and send light and love to everyone, including your enemies. If that's coming from your subconscious, that's a wonderful message.
Yeah, do you know what? There's never been nothing but love coming from these messages, and that's the difference with it. Okay, there was one a bit negative sometimes that comes through. He's only negative towards the sense of where we're going and stuff. He just doesn't really like it, but
everybody with their own point of view. Everybody's got something. You notice how I tried to get lottery numbers out of him? Whatever. I tried.
Do you know what? There was a point where you said that. He wanted to say, "I'm pissing my pants with laughter," but I couldn't say it. I've said it now, but I didn't want to say it. I'm like, I can't say that. But that's what he wanted to say. So I blocked.
You got to say that stuff because it is funny.
I blocked that. I'll be honest with you. I found that really interesting what we just done there. I mean, there's me in the UK. There's you all the way in California, and then there's this whatever we.
And there was no level of hypnosis, and I'm not a hypnotist. I'm not a hypnotherapist. I'm just asking you questions.
No, yeah.
The key thing from my point of view, from my perspective, is I don't judge the answer. This is the hardest part, which is whatever you say, I allow it to be whatever it is. And if I see that it's odd or different, then I'll ask, why is that so odd, or why is that so different? So I specifically asked him about, why were all your predictions wrong? He didn't take it personally. He said, look, there's many different strings and possibilities. Yeah. But anyway, listen, my friend, I have got to run.
I know you have. I know. Listen, I know. I know. Well, I just want to say thank you for that. That was the weirdest ending I've ever done to a show, but I appreciate that.
Very unusual. I appreciate it too. And recorded it, so I will type it up and then I'll send you a copy so we can sort of go over it and take a look.
Absolutely.
And figure out what the heck.
I know. Yep. I will also send you the links to this show. We've put your books and everything else up on there. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Right. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Send love and light. All right, brother. I'll see you later. Be good.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on The More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.